think this is part of the collective shift we're seeing right now too, is this productivity guilt. We have
Uh,
been told, that those have to, shoulds, and musts, you have to constantly be working. Nothing's just handed to you in life. It takes hard work. It takes this. So everything I just said in that quote, people go, it couldn't possibly be that easy. Why did nobody tell us this, right? Well, because look what's been built up over generations in our society of what we believe it has to be. And we're not machines. And I think this is a collective shift going like slow down and trust that voice, like you're saying. But even then on social media right now, you see people saying what we have to be doing, or that productivity guilt, right? That those of us, even if you're trusting doing what you want to do, we're looking over our shoulder like there's somebody we have to answer to. There isn't. There never was, right? But we have to trust ourselves first then in that day by day,
mm,
moment by moment, and let go of all of the other voices. Or to simplify it so much, just constantly what I say to people in the process is, are you doing it for you, or are you doing it for the them? Whoever the them is still. The boss, the parents, the person that you felt you had to prove something to. And when we let go of all of that and start just doing it for ourselves, everything does start to flow easier.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Ash Taba Show. Today, I'm joined by Barbara Howlin, who's an actress, an acting teacher, and also coaches people in The Artist's Way, which is an amazing book by Julia Cameron. And I'm sure Barbara's going to have some amazing insights into how she does these classes and how she helps enrich people's lives through the courses. So let's get right into it. Barbara, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Right? Thanks for having me.
All the way from rainy LA. I like how it's raining in LA, but I'm in England and it's sunny. That's like a
I
weird
know.
a weird metaphor for the moment we're in, where like everything's on its head right now.
For everybody.
How we were touching on it before we hit record, but how are you holding up with the whole situation? I think it'd be remiss for me to not bring up the quarantine we're all living through. How is it for you right now?
I think it's waves of feeling. We were just talking, and I could share. Starting in December, I lost someone and was already feeling grief. And as I'm talking to a lot of people, I think we're all feeling this weird collective consciousness of grief, of maybe not having our jobs, not being the person we thought we were out in the world, and just having to sit in our own feelings at home feels overwhelming. And I still trust on a daily basis that everything happens for a reason and that this is happening, but there's a lot of feelings around it. And doing all the things to release those feelings just feels like the practice right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Was speaking to I had an emotional and wellness therapist on a few weeks back, and she was talking about two things that you just touched on right there. Number one is sitting in your emotions. Like we're being almost forced to do that right now. Like we had all these distractions before, and now 90% of them being taken away, and it's like you're forced to just sit with your own stuff, no matter what you're going through. And I think that's pretty intense for people. Um, like I don't think there are set tips or guidelines, so that's the wrong way to phrase it. But how are you trying to find ways to process some of this stuff? Because as you said, it's doubly heavy for you with some of the personal losses you had before this thing kicked into gear.
I think that's exactly it too. Is especially in this time, there's no right or wrong way to grieve. And so, how do we do that? It's whatever's right for you, but that requires us to slow down. Like Mother Nature's forcing us to slow down right now and take that breath and like listen to our soul, that spirit within, and only that is going to tell you what to do right now. For me, the artist way practices help, which is I'm writing every single morning in the journal. I call them spirit pages. She calls them morning pages. But to me, like you can't hide from that inner spirit that's past your ego brain in those pages. So to be candid with yourself about what you're feeling, and then whatever that is to release for everyone. Screaming in pillows if you're angry and you have close neighbors, great, just yell into a pillow. I call it starfishing, and I will just lay down flat on the floor and like open my heart to let those feelings just come. But I think it's listening to that inner kid within, to whatever they need right now.
I think that's really interesting because a lot of people just think they have to neutralize bad feelings or whatever we label them, negative emotions, as though if you have them, there's something wrong with you. And obviously, what you're talking to there is the fact that it's totally normal to have them. If anything, it's abnormal to pretend you don't. And I think now more than ever, maybe we all need to, scream in a pillow or, I don't know, punch a punching bag if you have boxing or whatever it is you can do, right? Because there's a lot of pent up stuff. I heard an interview a few days ago. Do you know? Have you heard of Greg Braden? Have you heard of him?
I think so.
He's of a similar kind of ilk of guys like Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza.
Okay.
Um, and so he said this really interesting thing about how the grief that we're going through collectively is kind of like a mourning of a previous way of life in many
Yeah.
ways. And that's what we're all, I guess, processing. And I guess the weird thing is we don't know what the new version is going to be yet.
Mhm.
Which I don't know if that makes it scary or does that make it more of like a is there potential in it or is there fear in it? I think that's the big question that's coming out of this for me. I don't know how does that sit with you?
I agree. I think right now, and and everything we're saying isn't to minimize the people who are sick in this or losing someone, because I have just lost someone, and yet still I trust that this is happening for a reason, and I think that is becoming the new normal, and we're really seeing everything we were already living in before. Were you living from a place of fear and lack, or are you living from a place of love and trust? Whatever it is that you trust in, like the world, love, people, humanity. And that is how I try to, day by day, through all the feelings, choose to live from that. But that's it right now. And what if that's the new normal, is just deciding between those two things, because it's all we have control over right now. And I think if we all do that, that energetic output is going to make a big shift right now. But we have the choice in that.
Mm. Especially if it's a collective thing. If we're all in fear, we kind of have an idea as to where that might go. If we're all, on the opposite end of the spectrum, and we kind of choose optimism or love or whatever works for you as a label, that maybe hasn't quite happened before on a mass scale. And that's kind of exciting if you think of that potential of what could come out of this. Um,
Right. And
Obviously, as you
mass
said,
gratitude. Don't we feel such different gratitude just for these things? I mean, we're very lucky, you and I talking, to be where we're at during all of this.
that's interesting too, because we're talking over tech, and we're talking right now going through this, and we're in Western countries that, whilst it's really rough, comparatively speaking, it's not quite that bad as maybe other parts in the world. Like this is a global lockdown. I spoke to a friend who's in Goa, who is from India, and he said that for a couple of weeks you couldn't find food.
Wow.
Like it was going back to like you had to almost hunt through the town to find food because it's a tourist place. So tourism season's over. Tourists have all gone home to escape this thing, and the people left are the original hippies that have been there since forever and the locals, and they had no food coming in for like a
Wow.
couple of weeks. And then you go, okay, I guess the queues at Costco, whilst really annoying, are
Right.
bearable in that context.
Right. Trader Joe's is keeping us separated by 6 feet and giving us hand sanitizer, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
You know, we're very lucky.
exactly. So I mean, you touched on the artist way a few times, and let's let's get out of the super heavy stuff a little bit of the current situation. We can't escape it. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of the artist way a little bit if we can, because you're let's call it a practitioner. I don't like the word, but it's what's come to mind. But let's say that of the artist way. But for people that don't quite know it or know of it but haven't gone deep into it, maybe you could give a little bit of an overview of the book and just what it sort of promotes and what it's about.
Sure. So Julia Cameron wrote this, well, it came out in the early 90s, but she'd been doing this work with people for a long time before the book even came out. So it's been around quite a long time. But it's a 12-week course, so 3 months of these specific tasks, a couple that I just touched on, of you wake up every morning and you journal. You commit to going on an artist date, whatever that is, dating yourself during this time all by yourself, for something that sounds exciting and fun each week. And then each chapter along the way, we're tackling different subjects and doing different tasks that are really about recovering that inner artist kid that I was talking about within, to check in with spirit and be like, what do I really want? Past the shoulds and have tos and musts that society and our parents and school and things have put on us. Yes, all of that, right? And we may understand it, I even think at our age, up here logically, but it takes a practice to start enjoying the process of just being an artist and calling yourself daily on the mindfulness to get past any guilt or instilled shame that was put on us around it, because we all deserve to be artists. And she wrote this with the belief that you don't even have to do this as your career as we're doing, but that we all have an inner kid artist that just wants to be liberated from all of that stuff, and it should be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Like, obviously, people see the word artist and think, I'm not an artist. That doesn't apply to me. But maybe could we interchange the word artist with just creator in this context for the bankers and lawyers out there who might benefit from this kind of work? But
Yeah. And whatever that means, because what's so beautiful and surprising about the process is most of the time the people that I get in it, or at least here in LA, right, who are writers or directors or actors mainly, will jump in and they think that it's going to shift like their acting career and all this, when really they finally start, look, it's right here, they finally start playing the guitar, which they've always wanted to do since they were a kid and they didn't realize that. Or they start painting again, but they had stopped painting because that wasn't going to be a career. And it's really about just liberating all of that. And it does change everything else in your life then, if acting is your career, if this is your career. But it's trusting that inner spirit. One of my favorite quotes of the book that she says is, what we want to do is what we're meant to do. And when you do what you want to do, doors open, money flows, the energetic flow outside of you changes. That's it.
which is simple, really, if you think about it. But then, like most things, it's also really complex.
Right.
And so I guess at a time like this, with what we're all dwelling in, this is a big thing, isn't it? Right now, like people are doing what they want to do more now. I'm finding than ever before, at least in the people that I know. Like all of a sudden, I have friends that are saying they're almost living their best lives amid all this chaos and horrible stuff that's happening. They've got so much extra focus and quiet that they're just doing what they want to do, and I guess that's tapping into what you're saying there with the process. There must be barriers though when people start, right? Like, what are some of the common things that people seem to struggle with when first starting out and delving into this with you?
Well, I think this is part of the collective shift we're seeing right now too, is this productivity guilt. We have
Uh,
been told, that those have to, shoulds, and musts, you have to constantly be working. Nothing's just handed to you in life. It takes hard work. It takes this. So everything I just said in that quote, people go, it couldn't possibly be that easy. Why did nobody tell us this, right? Well, because look what's been built up over generations in our society of what we believe it has to be. And we're not machines. And I think this is a collective shift going like slow down and trust that voice, like you're saying. But even then on social media right now, you see people saying what we have to be doing, or that productivity guilt, right? That those of us, even if you're trusting doing what you want to do, we're looking over our shoulder like there's somebody we have to answer to. There isn't. There never was, right? But we have to trust ourselves first, then, in that day by day,
mm,
moment by moment, and let go of all of the other voices. Or to simplify it so much, just constantly what I say to people in the process is, are you doing it for you, or are you doing it for the them? Whoever the them is, still the boss, the parents, the person that you felt you had to prove something to. And when we let go of all of that and start just doing it for ourselves, everything does start to flow easier.
that's the big thing, isn't it? It's the judgment or fear of judgment of other people or things or institutions that we're not even aware of sometimes, right? Um, I guess it's those subconscious stories that have been wired into us from God knows when. Um, how so? I understand intuitively the notion of like journaling continuously and keeping going until it becomes a steady stream of subconsciousness, so you see what's coming out, and the repetition allowing you to almost, I guess, reprogram or rewire some of those stories. But is there like a deeper sort of science to it that I'm missing and glossing over here? Is there, if someone's listening, how does it actually sort of almost scientifically help them go
Right.
from not being able to do what they want to do to then foregoing that judgment and eventually after those 3 months, I should say, almost transforming into being much more
Yeah.
empowered?
Well, I think you just named two of the things, which is we are literally mind hacking in this. First comes the awareness of all of these stories, which I think we all go so fast in this world. We think we understand it, but we're not fully aware of. So the journaling is making us be really radically candid with self. So we start to have a deeper level of mindfulness in it. And then, of course, I'm actually taking a free course online right now through Yale. Everyone go to Coursera if you're looking to do something, and it's on the science of well being. And I love that the professor Roy Santos calls it the GI Joe fallacy, that we were taught, learning is knowing is half the battle, and it's just not the truth. So we do this to start having more mindfulness and knowing, but it's this process, embracing the process of calling yourself on it over 3 months, that we have to start rewiring that. And scientifically, it actually shows it takes 18 months, not 3 months. I wish, Julie Cameron. It takes 18 months of doing that practice for us actually to completely let go of all of those old stories, if you're
Wow.
being mindful about it. So, this is really just an introduction of like having a process for yourself. And we're so used to being in the society of product or end result goal oriented that we don't even enjoy the process anymore. So, it's about slowing down to be more mindful and just like enjoying the process again.
And so some of the ways and tools of doing that beyond, say, journaling, what else, what other stuff do people eventually start to tap into to help with that repetition?
Well, there's so many tasks in the book that I don't even know how to narrow
Okay.
that down.
We're not going to list them all then. Okay. Let's
So,
pick your
so much
favorites.
of it, my favorites. So much of it is really delving back into your childhood, questioning all the things that like we actually found fun, that we found freedom in, that maybe we were told was wrong or too much, and we shut down and still have that shame around. So the tasks are fun things like remembering your old childhood bedroom and literally sitting there and visualizing it and being like, oh my God, I loved that toy. Why did I stop playing with Legos? Why did I, all of these things, to really check back in. And it's surprising how many people have a hard time remembering all that stuff
Mm,
because it's buried so deep. So really all of these tasks are about like peeling back the layers over 3 months, and it takes time.
18 months even. Damn. It makes
18
sense though. But it
months.
makes sense. But I mean, but it makes sense. Like, um, what was it? Have you read Bruce Lipton's book, The Biology of Belief?
I haven't.
Oh, you should read that because I think it totally aligns with what you're talking about with the mind hacking. The only reason I bring it up is he, based on the science and research that he's done with cells and looking at how they actually respond to stressors and different energies, he then realized that the mind is comprised of the conscious and the subconscious, which is what you're talking to, but that 5% of our mind is the conscious mind. So the thoughts we have are minimal when you compare them to the power of the subconscious, which is 95% of what's going on under the hood. And those programs that you're talking to are running all the time. And this is always the one that I think most people can relate to, which is the New Year's resolution, right? Like, I'm going to get really fit and healthy this year. I'm going to hit the gym. I've consciously made the decision, but it's running on 5% of your operating system. And underneath, somewhere, there's 95% of subconscious programs that are like, you don't deserve that, or you're not worthy of that, or whatever it might be.
Right.
And we get pissed off because there's a clash and we don't get it because we're consciously going, but I'm saying I want to do this. Why am I defaulting to something else? And
Yes.
and I guess that's where the repetition of all the 18 months come in to get those
Yeah.
subconscious
And
programs.
part of I think what comes up from that also in the book, what you were just saying, she calls so beautifully in this section called the virtue trap,
Mhm.
right? Is that we have been also taught that self-care is selfish, that if we say no to people that we love and care about to take care of ourselves first, that it's selfish, and that it's so much more virtuous, to constantly be the helper, to be the fixer. And I'm a recovering helper for life. I could help someone to death. And like realizing that wasn't doing anyone a service with that, because we do all already have the answers inside of ourselves. And underneath all of that, I would get really resentful, but I didn't know how to ask for help. I wasn't taking care of myself first. And part of this process has to be slowing down. Going on those artist dates by yourself is one of the hardest things for people to commit to, because there's always something else to be doing to be productive. Or I had to go help my sister with this. And we don't just slow down and take care of ourselves. It's tough.
Yeah, it's that thing of like, I do think helping people is important, but I think before you can help someone else, you need to be in a place of having already helped yourself and be selfish,
I
which
can
isn't a
stay on a
bad
plane.
thing.
You have to put that oxygen mask on yourself first, or you can't help anyone else.
Yeah, exactly. So how did you kind of get into it? Did you fall into this? I'm guessing you always knew of the work, but what was the trigger for you to go so deep as you have done in the last number of years?
Well, this book changed my life in definitive ways, and I think first did it, I don't know, over probably 12 years ago,
Mm.
is my guess. And everything changed. I left the job I was at, the relationship I was in ended. All of these things sort of crumbled away to this period we're talking about in the world right now of going, I don't know what's going to happen next. But this process and just committing to that, as long as I kept checking in here, I think what it led me to was so much more fulfilling and was the deeper truth of who I was. So when I got to a point as an acting teacher, as you know from MEW and other places how we met, Ashley,
Mm.
I had been telling people to do this book for so many years, and I think two people maybe finished it on their own. And because it's a very vulnerable process, if you don't feel seen and heard by other people in it, it's really easy to drop off when the going starts to get tough or when those shifts start to happen. So I just wanted people to finish the book, just finish the book because it's a life changer. So I started leading these groups online so
Mm.
people could do it from anywhere. And I think being seen and heard in a group, people don't end up leaving. They really want to push through and they see that we are all the same and we are all in it together. So it's been so fulfilling. Yeah.
So you're kind of like their accountability partner, I guess,
Yeah.
in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. A lot of ways through this. How I fully get how it's gonna change and enhance your life on a personal level. Can we tap into it from an actor's or artist perspective? Like, what shifts have you seen in your work as an actress and as a writer and as a creator? Was it noticeable, or was it a very slow burn, and then you looked back and went, oh, actually.
I think it was a slow burn. I think we all think we'll do the one thing or read the one book and you'll be like, great, I understand. No, it was a process. It's still a process of daily mindfulness for me, but everything feels easier.
Mm.
It just slowly, incrementally, since I first did this and I'm doing it on repeat too, because that's what Julia Cameron asks you to do if you're leading a group. So I'm just doing this process on repeat and everything just starts to feel easier. Whether it's the nerves walking into an audition, and going, no, no, that's coming from a place of fear and lack. And I trust that I am enough and it's enough. Or if it's being a writer or a painter and getting in the flow, we see that it's just about taking the first step and then trusting the process and not worrying about getting your freaking painting hung up in the Met or what I'm going to wear to the Oscars, which is what we all go to. It's just taking that one little step in trusting. And that feels way easier.
Self-awareness game, isn't it, really, at the end of the day, right? Like, you're not having those moments of nerves or whatever it might be, but you're catching them and
Yeah.
then going down the road you want to go down, not the other road, which is where I guess the old programs want you to go down. And we all know where that road ends up anyway, which is awesome. And what about as a teacher? Because obviously you alluded to it. You teach at AMAW, and now obviously you kind of teach and coach people in the artist way. But when you're teaching actors, this must obviously just seep out naturally. Um,
Yeah.
do you find yourself just doing it organically, or do you find yourself applying some of these tools and techniques very consciously when you're teaching actors in the studio?
I think it at this point comes out more naturally, but it is still like you said, it's never just, oh great, I've got this. I always joke I'm a recovering perfectionist for life. And so it's making the conscious choice, what's changed for me in this, of being seen in my own vulnerability more. Coming from a place of encouragement and not trying to give someone a perfect formula of this is how things are supposed to be, because there is no perfect answer. And as artists, it's always going to be subjective. And my opinion is just one opinion and there's so many different ways. But coming from this place of encouragement and coming from a place of me sharing more vulnerably of myself, I think A, resonates in people more, and B, just helps everyone else to relax and be more vulnerable and be themselves and get weird and
Mm.
have more fun.
I think the idea of vulnerability, we understand it as being empowering, but I think it scares the living crap out of a lot of people. So for someone who might be listening and hearing that, and they're like, "Wait, you want me to be what now?" They've tuned out already. Like they're
They
not
were
even going
scared
to look
when I
at the
said
book.
to scream into a pillow, Ashley.
Right, right. Fair enough. That's what they're doing right now. Um, no, but for people that have maybe an interest in this, but there's that resistance, they're on the fence. Like, what would you say to them to get them to just commit to that first step? Um, is it get the book and try and read it, or would it be more of a find someone like yourself to guide them through the process? Because I've heard other people say they've been to people who do what you do, who they went to a 3-month thing. They went and, had a group environment, and again, it changed their lives, is what they've said. Do you think that's the best way to go, especially if you're a bit on the fence about it?
If you're on the fence about it, I would say yes. I think there's a big difference for vulnerability, or look at just those other words that we were talking about going full on Brene Brown that everyone should watch. Like the guilt and shame, I think, is what's holding us back so much of the time. And the second you start being seen and heard in that, or shine some light on it, like she says, it can't exist anymore. But it's a different thing to do this process by yourself, which of course anyone can do. Everyone should do it, however you can do it. But it's different to then feel seen and heard in it. And I think the second somebody's on a group call and lets himself get frustrated or angry about life, or lets himself cry and be seen in it, it's just ripping off these band-aids that we didn't even know were there. And then you see no one was judging them. It resonated in every single person that they just shared with. And then we're like, we're all in this together. We are all in this together.
Yeah, I guess it's that first time, right? Like you said, pull off the band-aid, and the initial preconception of maybe thinking that there's something wrong with you if you bring it up, or it's like people's notion of therapy being wrong if you go to a therapist, because it must mean you're broken, which is complete nonsense. And I guess it's yeah, how do people get over that first hurdle in their mind to even start the process of going down this road? And I guess it is as simple as just either make that decision, or someone has to give them a nudge, or just taking that first dive in somehow.
And I think it comes full circle to what we were saying. The first thing I would say to people is to slow down, close those eyes, take a breath. And in here, we really do know that we want to be seen and heard in all of it, I think. We really do know that we are all one little nanosecond away from being the person next to us. And maybe the judgment has really been coming from here more so than from other people. I think that less people are going to judge us than we realize, and it's going to resonate. I don't know.
It's so true, isn't it? Nobody actually really cares in the grand
Honestly,
scheme of things.
I know.
And
Yeah.
I mean, but I found that, and I'm sure you did. You obviously, you mentioned the loss you had. I had a loss, obviously, at the end of last year as well. And you're in your own world, in your own cocoon. But ultimately, when that moment comes, you get people reaching out in the first few weeks. But after that, you're back to just being on your own. And really, people have almost forgotten about it, and they're back to their regular lives. It's the same as I remember Robin Williams talking about winning the Oscar, and he said, "Oh, the first week everybody's like, oh, the Oscar, way to go, man, congratulations!" And by week 2, they were back to, "Hey, Mork," and they forgot all about the fact that he even won the thing. And I think that it is such an important perspective. Like, no one really cares about, like, after the moment, they're on to them again.
Right. And I think, and what you just said comes full circle also again to what we were saying, which is you have to just enjoy the process of life and savor what's right in front of you and have that gratitude, because the Oscar isn't going to make or break you. Getting the book deal isn't going to make or break you. We're all artists and we're going to be unemployed again. So we really want to like just enjoy this process and be present in it.
And I think also for the non artists in terms of profession, like the people who, as you I think really nicely said, are artists and creators in of themselves, but don't have the career path of that. There is still that opportunity and scope to do that and tap into those things. And it's not about the job title of CEO or seat or whatever it might be. It's about the process of doing what you love and not doing stuff just for the paycheck. Um, and maybe this moment we're in is a bit of a removal of the veil of all that bullshit, because you're really realizing that those safe jobs aren't as safe or any more safe than the creatives that have been, roaming freely as we have for so many years.
Well, and even for me, I don't have that job right now
Mm.
teaching. And it's shifted for all of us, and yet still having to do it myself right now. And so many people putting the productivity of you should be doing these self-tape challenges, you should be doing these things. And yesterday I was like, I kind of just want to sit on my balcony and watercolor this succulent. And so I did that, and it was beautiful and it was fun, and like that's what my kid wanted to do that day, and it was so much more enjoyable and getting caught up in the have to's.
And I like how you keep talking about the inner child and the inner kid. Is it is it like you're having a continuous dialogue internally with that inner child and kind of keeping it calm and letting it play and all that stuff? Or is it not quite as implicit as that?
I think that's what it starts to feel like the more you're in the process. And then there's also that pesky ego, which you need to have an awareness and conversation with. And I tell people, if it feels weird or foreign to do that, you can name them, you can make it separate. Like I named my inner artist child when it felt weird having those conversations in my pages. And then that ego pops up, and I have to have a conversation with her and be like, okay, I see and I hear you, but you don't get a seat at the adults table. You have to go sit at the kids table, you know?
Or maybe the other way around. You have to stay at the
Yeah.
adults table. We're going to be here on the kids table. You go do
Yes,
you, and
I like that, Ashley.
you do your
You fix the
balance.
things, make a mess, and you can sit
Yeah,
over there and judge us, but we're not
yeah.
going to.
You judge us whilst doing your balance sheets and whatever it is that you're doing, um, which is awesome. I normally like to sort of round these things off with a little bit of a more sort of fun, quick fire question round. And you'll know what this is from because you'll know inside the Actors Studio. So I'm basically taking the questions that Bruce Lipton, who sadly passed away, didn't he? Asks at the end of the show. You'd be surprised how many people don't know inside the Actors Studio when I bring it up.
Really?
Yeah. Some of them are actors too. That's where I'm like, okay. Anyway.
I've seen it. I'm prepared. I'm getting my water.
Okay. Have you got your? Oh, you already know the questions and the answers that you're going to give.
I don't know these questions.
Oh, okay. You will as soon as I say them. The first one is, what's your favorite word?
Shit. Can I say that on your podcast?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can say whatever you want. Yeah. The fifth question is, what's your favorite swear word? So I think you've either answered that already, or you're going to have time to think of something really amazing.
Shit, but it feels good. Yeah.
What's your least favorite word?
Hate.
What turns you on in a creative, intellectual, spiritual kind of way?
I think dancing around for so long I wasn't in my body, and just letting your body find that free abandon lets the feeling come, lets everything else come too.
What turns you off not dancing?
What turns me off not dancing? People living in those definitives. I think that's where the hate thing comes from. The world's not black and white.
Yeah, there's a lot of absolutism coming out even more now, isn't it? It's like there's this camp and there's that camp and there's no gray area. And it's like, actually, there's only gray area.
Only gray area.
Okay, what's your favorite swear word?
Shit.
It's good. It's better. Most people say fuck, which is a great swear word, and it's very interchangeable, but it's nice to have something new. So thank you.
It's that little kid coming out with the shit, because I think it was so infrequent in my family when anyone would curse, and when I would hear like my grandmother finally lose it, that was the word. And
Okay.
like, that's it.
What is your favorite sound or noise?
Good sigh.
Yeah. A good sigh as well. I like that. Not one of those, not a stress sigh or anything.
Yeah.
Is that, because my next question is, what's your least favorite noise or sound? So is it that?
Yeah, that sound really bothers me. It just feels like the choking back of feeling, I is just like reveling in it.
What profession other than your own or the ones that you have done or do would you most like to attempt?
I think photography.
Oh.
And I was actually just Googling, thanks to Artist Way, going, maybe right now I'll take a free photography course online.
Yeah, you were saying before there are so many great online courses and things available. Coursera, which has been around for a while, but there's so much great stuff you can pick up on those places. And I think that's going to be maybe the new education model eventually, because you get to pick and choose. And these are like, where was the course you were doing from? It was Yale, wasn't it?
Yale, and it's free. I mean, if you want to get credits and a certificate, they're not, but I'm just doing it to learn for fun. And
Exactly. What profession other than your own would you not want to attempt? And I assume you want to attempt your own, so scratch what I said with that bit.
I do want to attempt my own,
yeah.
but Recently we're doing all this ancestry.com stuff, and I found out I come from a family of like circus people way back when, and that makes me laugh out loud because anything having to do with the circus terrifies me. I was so scared of clowns as a kid. I would not get up on a tightrope or do any of that. Like working with lions, I think about all of those things, and that sounds really scary.
Yeah, I mean, clowns are just weird. Tight ropes is like terrible for height and vertigo, and big animals and cats. I mean, Tiger King has put me off for like
I know
life.
they should be out there
They should be
free.
out there, not chained up by crazy rednecks and psycho
Yeah,
hippie ladies. What a weird show.
it was
Mm,
fascinating.
weird show. Finally, last question. When it's all said and done, all the smoke is cleared, what would you like the story of your life to be?
Mm. That I was of service with truth. I think we can live and be of service, like you said, but be lovingly candid. And I think right now, especially in this time, we all need some loving candor for the world.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, listen, it's been awesome chatting with you. The last few minutes are yours, really, to just sort of, I guess, plug anything that you're doing, talk about how people can connect with you on the socials, or how they can be work or collaborate with you with the Artist's Way. So the floor is yours to just, yeah, talk about
Great.
any of that.
She said my last name is Howlin, so my website, barbarahowlin.com, has everything. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter as Babs Howlin. I'm not on Facebook. I've been on Facebook for many years, but you can find me there with all of the information. And the next Artist Way starts on April 21st.
Awesome. Yeah, we didn't get to that. So how many do you like? How often do you run them? Do you do just quarterly, or does it depend?
Normally, I only do two at a time
Mhm.
max, but I just added this one right now, and I'm trying to do it very quickly. We'll even see if it happens or it fills because I really just want to encourage people right now to do this process now more than ever. So I made it sliding scale. It's more pay what you can because I just think I really want everyone to do this right now.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I'll get the links and put them in the descriptions and everything so people can find it if they want and get involved because it sounds like if you get into it, it's a great way of just opening yourself up to a little bit more truth than what you maybe are used to, which isn't scary. Well, it is, but not in a
It's
bad way.
scary at first, and then it feels so liberating, and I just think it makes everything easier. Everything just wants to be
I
easier.
guess you could find a little bit more peace, right? Which is probably what we're all trying to find at the end of the day. Just a little bit more peace in our lives amidst all the chaos.
Yes.
Amazing. Oh, well, Barbara, thank you so much for joining me. It's been awesome. And for people listening, check out the links, connect with Barbara, get involved with the Artist's Way. It may just change your life.